I've been working with the Klamax algae, the algae from Klamax Lake in Oregon, for almost 18 years now, and I've had many benefits myself by using the algae. This has led me over time to develop more significant, deeper research in cooperation with the University of Urbino, especially to find out what were the reasons and what type of molecules were present in the algae that would justify those health benefits that we perceived. So about 8 years ago, we started doing laboratory studies, in vitro studies, some animal studies, up to some preliminary human studies. We found certain specific molecules and developed 2 extracts, which actually we've patented. One that works mostly in the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory area, thanks to the phycocyanins, specific molecules of the blue-green algae that are present in Klamax algae. And the other one, the one that we're talking about today, the extract called Klamine, that actually concentrates a certain amount of molecules that are active at the neurological level with antidepressant activity and other type of neurological activities. Regarding this last extract, Klamine, we looked for some cooperation with researchers that could do more clinical research, and it is because of that that we met Professor Genazzani, to whom we were drawn mostly because we found that while being an expert in hormonal therapy and in the hormonal condition of in menopause, he was also very interested in the other aspect of this condition, which is the neurological aspect, the working of the nervous system and of the neurotransmitters. So I'd like now to leave the scene to Professor Genazzani, who could explain to us precisely this relationship between the menopausal condition and neurotransmission and the nervous system.
Hi, it's a great pleasure for me to be your guest and to have the chance to explain and a little bit to debate about menopause and mainly all the changes that are typical for the menopausal transition. Menopause is a very peculiar period of the life of women. It's a transition moment in which women is experiencing a great transition from adult and completely fertile life to a moment where hormones and all reproduction is completely gone. So this creates a little bit of changes in the way of living the everyday life and mainly the experiences of life of women itself. It's important to remember that nowadays the expectancy of life is around 85 years old, but more or less 150 years ago was more or less 55, 58. So great changes, but something that we have to expect now is to find solutions to improve and to help women to spend a little bit better these 30-35 years that are in between the beginning of menopause to the end of life. And the end of life needs to be reached exactly in a good health and with a great quality of life. So the things that we have to think about a little bit today is just to go through and to better understand what is menopause and the changes that are occurring during menopause. It's important to remember that brain in men as well as in women is able to affect and to modulate whatever is going on inside our body. We know very well that we have a sort of computer inside our brain, which is the hypothalamus, which is able to interfere with all the elementary functions and mainly with all the activities of our body, from the regulation of temperature to feeding, to the control of the metabolic pathways, the blood rate and mainly the blood pressure, the control also of the levels of the salt inside the body are mainly regulated and controlled inside the hypothalamus. So it's important to remember that whatever is going on inside the brain needs estrogens, but also it's important the combination of estrogens and the functions of neurons inside the brain with all neurotransmitters, neuromodulators and neuropeptides. It's important to have an adequate balance of beta-endorphin, the opioidergic family, the presence of serotonin as well as of dopamine, which are able to modulate and interfere inside the brain with the functions for the control of mood, behavior, anxiety, depression, all symptoms that are quite elegantly emerging during the menopausal transition. So it's important to remember that this is menopause, a very weak moment for women, and it's important for them to have a better approach to menopause transition so that to have better tools just to suffer for very, very low time, very small amount of time of such disturbances. And it's also important to remember that whatever is going inside the brain during menopause is something that needs inside the neurons a perfect efficiency. So when we are thinking about treatment in these women, needs always to remember that brain and mainly the nervous system needs a little bit of help in terms of neuroprotective action. Aging and menopause, it's implementing every day a little bit more of the oxidation. And the oxidation and the excess of amount of free radical acids inside are able to affect in a negative way whatever the functions of our body, but mainly of their neuronal activity. The fragility syndrome, which is a sort of a weakness of the body, which is the classical experience of the men and women during menopause, is emerging. And we, as doctors, we really need to approach this not only thinking about hormonal replacement therapy, but also using other tools. It's important for us to conceive that the starting point of aging is in women in the same moment, in the same time, together with menopause. So the hypoestrogenic conditions, together with the starting of aging, it's amplifying all the weakness that aging is inducing inside our body. So the cardiovascular function, the brain function, the metabolic function, and also the mobility is really affected in all menopausal women. So the depression, anxiety, pain perception, the reduction of mobility, the reduction of memory, and also the altered metabolic disturbances which are typical of menopause are together the main goal for the solution that we have to find. And it's really important for us to remember that the inability of the brain to have normal levels of all the neurotransmitters and all the neuromodulators are one of the weak points on which we should work. And that's why we really were happy to start the study together with Dr. Scoglio, since the chance to have a tool, a chemical tool, which is an extract from a very natural plant that might affect in a positive way all the neurotransmission and the neuromodulations, gives us the real idea to have in our hands a really potent and intriguing substance that might help not only women which are just asking for hormonal replacement therapy, but mainly for those women that do not want that or may not be able to have it.
Well, maybe at this point it would be good to explain the mechanism of action of clamine. Clamine is an extract from Klamax algae which concentrates some of the most relevant molecules that are present in this algae. Especially, it concentrates phenylethylamine. Phenylethylamine is a molecule that we produce naturally in our brain. It's called the molecule of love because we produce a lot of it when we're in love, when we're happy, when we're joyous. And it's also a general neuromodulator because it modulates all the neurotransmitters that Professor Genazzani was talking about, especially dopamine, but also at times serotonin. So it has a neuromodulating activity. It stimulates attention, mood, but also, if necessary, it moderates excessive activity, and so it has also an anti-anxiety effect. The problem is that in many situations, many conditions, we don't produce enough of this neuromodulator, and so it's good to take it. Phenylethylamine is present in many foods, but only in Klamax algae seems to reach a relevant concentration, and especially in clamine. What is special also about clamine, though, it's the fact that it also concentrates some other molecules that are essential for phenylethylamine to work. If we take phenylethylamine orally, there are enzymes in our body that are called monoamine oxidase B enzymes, MAO-B enzymes, that actually destroy this molecule immediately after it is ingested. So it would never reach our brain. We found in climathalgia, and we concentrated in clamine, 3 different molecules that actually are very powerful natural MAO-B inhibitors of these enzymes. So they actually allow phenylethylamine to arrive and reach the brain. But monoamine oxidase B enzymes inhibitors, these 3 molecules, are also very effective to increase the activity of dopamine and the other neurotransmitters. What is also important to stress is the fact that these 3 molecules that are monoamine oxidase B inhibitors are natural. In other words, they do not have the typical side effects of the drugs. Compared to the typical drugs that do the same activity, they're actually as powerful as the drug, but without any of the side effect. And this is very, very important because it makes clamine to be a very effective but natural